In the deepest shadows of the galaxy, a presence lingered that could twist the very fabric of life itself. Darth Plagueis, the man who whispered to the Force and bent it to his will, walked through a silent temple where time seemed to bend around him. Stars outside flickered like distant candles, and in that darkness, the seeds of a tragic ambition were sown. He had mastered death in ways no other dared imagine, yet the galaxy itself trembled at the whisper of his name. Tonight, as lightning cut across the alien skies, a lesson in power, betrayal, and the fragility of even the mightiest would begin. The galaxy whispered his secrets, yet none could truly understand the depths of his ambition. Darth Plagueis studied the fine line between life and death, bending the Force to save and destroy with equal ease. But mastery breeds obsession, and obsession shadows the heart with fear. Even in the quietest night, he felt the tremor of betrayal lurking nearby. The shadow of his apprentice, watching, waiting, learning. His experiments in life and death were unparalleled. Planets whispered of healings that should have been impossible, of resurrections that defied natural order. And yet, with every miracle came a haunting echo, a reminder that even the most powerful cannot escape the laws of ambition and the treachery of those closest. Through corridors of silence and towers of thought, he pondered the ultimate question: could death itself be mastered? He had glimpsed the answer, touched it with trembling fingers, yet every step closer to omnipotence carried a shadow of fragility. Somewhere in the distance, his apprentice watched silently, absorbing lessons that would one day shatter everything. Night fell over the temple, storms thrumming across alien skies. The power he held was absolute, yet the seed of betrayal had already been planted. And as the galaxy slumbered unaware, Darth Plagueis, master of life and death, would unknowingly march toward the tragedy that would etch his name into shadowed history. Darth Plagueis' experiments reached beyond the stars, touching life where none dared tread. In hidden laboratories, he coaxed energy from the Force to preserve the fragile threads of existence. Creatures thought lost returned to him, and planets whispered of miracles. Yet every act of creation left an echo of unease, a haunting reminder that power, unchecked, carries its own shadow. He marveled at the fragility of life, the delicate dance between existence and oblivion. For every soul he preserved, he felt the weight of cosmic balance pressing down upon him. In the quiet hum of the laboratory, he whispered promises to the Force itself, as if bargaining with fate. Yet one question lingered more persistently than any other. Could death truly be cheated, or was he merely delaying the inevitable? Outside the temple, the galaxy moved on oblivious stars, twinkling indifferently. Yet, within, tension built. The young apprentice observed every gesture, absorbing knowledge and understanding far beyond her years. The seeds of ambition had taken root in her, nurtured unknowingly by the very master she would one day betray. Every night, Plagueis walked the halls of his temple, pondering the mysteries he could command, yet never fully control. Life could be preserved, death delayed. Yet the heart of a Sith is never still. He sensed the faintest tremor in the Force, a whisper of betrayal, a shadow of ambition reflecting his own. The very apprentice he had nurtured began to mirror the darkness that defined him. In the heart of the night, lightning lit the temple towers, casting fleeting reflections of power and solitude. Plagueis paused on a balcony, looking down at the galaxy he nearly controlled. He had come close to conquering life itself, yet the seeds of his downfall had been sown quietly, invisibly. In the silence between thunderclaps, the future trembled, and the galaxy waited unknowingly for the tragedy yet to come. Darth Plagueis' power was unmatched, yet mastery of life weighed heavily on his conscience. Every resurrection, every manipulation of fate, left a subtle ripple through the Force, a disturbance he could not fully erase. Even as he reveled in his genius, the quiet question haunted him. At what cost does one play God? The galaxy remained oblivious, yet within the temple, every shadow seemed to whisper cautionary truths he could not silence. The young apprentice observed quietly, her gaze a mixture of awe and calculation. Plagueis had shared knowledge few could comprehend, yet he underestimated the hunger for power in her heart. Every lesson, every secret whispered into the Force was mirrored back with silent intent. In his pursuit to conquer death, he had inadvertently nurtured the seeds of his own demise. In the quiet of the laboratory, Plagueis tested the limits of his power. Life could be extended, death postponed, yet the Force whispered warnings he refused to hear. Every experiment drew him further into obsession, blinding him to the undercurrents around him. He believed knowledge alone would secure his immortality, but in the Sith tradition, ambition is often its own undoing. Whispers of destiny stirred in the air. The apprentice moved silently, learning, absorbing, waiting. Plagueis' brilliance blinded him to subtle cues. The way her eyes lingered on his every gesture, how her thoughts danced dangerously close to the dark edge. In the pursuit of absolute control over life, he had failed to see that some forces cannot be commanded and some betrayals are inevitable. As storm clouds raged across distant planets, Plagueis reflected on his near-divine power. The ability to preserve life, to cheat death itself, was intoxicating. Yet, in the silence between thunder and lightning, he felt the first tremors of a truth he could not ignore. The galaxy's order was never his to command, and the hand that guided the apprentice would one day strike back. The shadow of betrayal had already begun to stir. The apprentice no longer lingered in shadows. Her ambition had grown bold, her curiosity sharpened into cunning. Darth Plagueis sensed the shift, though he could not yet name it. The Force trembled around them, a quiet prelude to the storm that was about to break. Every lesson, every secret he had imparted became a thread in a web he did not see was tightening around him. Plagueis continued his experiments in life and death, a master of powers few could comprehend. Yet, with each success, the apprentice learned, memorizing his movements, his incantations, his weaknesses. The master believed knowledge was his alone, blind to the growing shadow of betrayal that followed every footstep he took. Night deepened and the temple's corridors whispered with secrets. The apprentice moved quietly, her movements precise, almost imperceptible. She touched instruments, memorized rituals, and studied the ways of the Force that her master wielded with godlike authority. In every glance, every gesture, she learned what would one day unmake him. Plagueis felt the first subtle tremor of distrust, a flicker in the Force, a hesitation in a gesture, a momentary shadow in the apprentice's eyes. Yet pride blinded him. He believed himself untouchable, the ultimate master of life, the arbiter of fate. In his hubris, he failed to see the inevitability of the path his apprentice now walked, a path that mirrored his own darkness. Lightning split the sky above the temple as Plagueis gazed out over distant worlds, pondering life, death, and the fragile threads he held. The apprentice approached silently, no hesitation in her step. The final lesson had begun, though only one would survive the reckoning. In the silence before the storm, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath, unaware that a master of life would soon fall by the hand of his pupil. The apprentice stepped forward, her resolve absolute. In the silent temple, the air quivered with tension as master and pupil faced one another. Plagueis, still believing himself untouchable, extended his hand, offering guidance even now. But the shadow of ambition had eclipsed loyalty. The galaxy itself seemed to pause, watching as destiny prepared its cruel verdict. In an instant, the Force surged violently. Plagueis' defenses faltered, his control over life and death momentarily disrupted. The apprentice struck with precision, exploiting every weakness he had unknowingly taught her. For the first time, the master felt fear, the sharp, bitter taste of vulnerability. His brilliance, his obsession, could not save him from the betrayal he had ignored. The hall echoed with the clash of power and ambition. Energy arcs illuminated the walls, casting fleeting shadows of a tragedy decades in the making. Plagueis faltered, grasping at the threads of life he had once controlled effortlessly. In that instant, the reality crystallized. No mastery of death could protect him from the ambition he had fostered in another. The storm outside mirrored the tempest within. Plagueis fell to his knees, gasping, a man who had danced with life and death, now powerless. The apprentice stood over him, not out of malice alone, but as the inevitable outcome of ambition nurtured and guided by the master's own hands. The culmination of years of study and secrecy had arrived, and the galaxy would never know the true extent of what had been lost. In the silence that followed, only the echo of betrayal remained. Plagueis' life ended, not through failure of knowledge or power, but through the ambition he had unwittingly nurtured. The apprentice looked out over the galaxy, carrying forward what she had learned. And as the storm subsided, the temple stood quiet, holding the memory of a master who almost conquered life itself, and fell to the very hand he had trained to succeed him. The temple lay silent, scarred by the clash of ambition and betrayal. Shadows stretched across broken devices and scorched floors, remnants of a master who had nearly conquered life itself. The apprentice wandered among the ruins, her footsteps light but deliberate, as though feeling the weight of every lesson she had learned. Even in victory, the echo of what had been lost resonated deeply, far above the galaxy. The stars continued their silent march, indifferent to the tragedy below. The apprentice paused on a balcony, gazing at distant worlds, realizing that mastery of life and death carried consequences she could never fully escape. The silence of the universe seemed to whisper both warning and wisdom, a reminder of the fragility of even the greatest power. Memories of Plagueis lingered in the temple halls, their lessons, their power, and the quiet echoes of a man who had touched the boundaries of life itself. The apprentice felt both awe and sorrow, understanding that the pursuit of ultimate control over the Force is a path lined with loneliness and peril. Even victory carries the weight of those who came before. Outside, storms had passed, leaving the galaxy bathed in quiet light. The apprentice moved among the artifacts of her master's legacy, feeling the power that had once seemed limitless, now tempered by mortality. In the calm after chaos, she realized that true mastery of the Force was not in controlling life or death, but in understanding the balance that governs all things. The galaxy moved on, oblivious to the tragedy that had unfolded in a single shadowed temple. The apprentice stood alone, a figure shaped by ambition, loss, and the weight of knowledge. Plagueis' story would become legend, whispered in hushed tones among those who study the Force, a cautionary tale of power, pride, and the inevitability of consequence. And in that silence, the galaxy itself seemed to breathe, carrying forward a memory of both greatness and sorrow. Time moved slowly in the temple, carrying with it the echoes of a man who had touched the edges of life and death. The apprentice stood quietly, tracing the path of her master's ambition through the remnants of the chamber. The weight of history settled around her, yet a calm began to take root. In understanding the rise and fall of greatness, she began to grasp the balance that governs the galaxy itself. The stars above shimmered silently, indifferent yet beautiful. A reminder that life persists even after great power has passed. The apprentice watched the galaxy, feeling both the burden of knowledge and the quiet release of understanding. The legacy of Darth Plagueis lived on not in control or conquest, but in the lessons written in shadows and memory. The temple, once alive with the hum of experiments and the surge of Force energy, now breathed with quiet. Dust settled over instruments and chambers, and the echoes of past ambition faded into stillness. Even the Force seemed to sigh, carrying with it the memory of a master who had sought to conquer the very essence of life, and the pupil who carried forward the wisdom and the caution of his fall. The apprentice reflected on the fragile line between greatness and ruin, ambition and hubris. Though the galaxy had been oblivious to the tragedy, she understood its weight. In the quiet, she felt a calm clarity. True mastery lies not in the power to defy life or death, but in the understanding of balance, patience, and the limits of one's own reach. At last, the galaxy exhaled its quiet rhythms. The apprentice left the temple behind, carrying lessons of ambition, power, and loss. Darth Plagueis' story became a memory, a caution, a whisper in the Force. And as the stars shimmered and planets turned, the galaxy moved onward, serene yet forever touched by the shadow of a master who almost conquered life itself.